All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome back today as we will be working on chapter 17, section 3. We should be finishing the entire section today, so a little bit longer, a little bit more homework today. I apologize, but well, yesterday was a very short day, so this kind of makes up for it. Once again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. So, today we're going to be looking at the domestic policies of the post war years as they shift under the very different leadership styles of Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. Spoiler alert, both of them will be president, if you haven't figured that out yet. So, Truman, remember, is a Democrat, whereas Eisenhower is a Republican. And so, we're going to be talking about both of their domestic policies today. We'll start with Truman and move to Eisenhower. So Truman will move to reconvert America from a wartime to a peacetime economy. So Truman's first job will be to shift all our factories from making war goods to, well, civilian and consumer goods. So Truman will bring home the soldiers as soon as possible because, well, election year is coming up and, well, people are saying no boats, no votes. In other words, if there's no boats bringing troops home, you're not going to get any votes. And when the wartime price controls were lifted, Americans went on a buying spree of consumer goods that will send prices soaring by 25%. So, because so many people are out there and the demand is so high for these goods, prices will rise by 25%. However, the thing to note is wages did not rise at the same rate, and this will lead to workers begin demanding wage increases, and nationwide strikes will break out by 1946 in industries like steel, automobile, coal, and electrical. So prices increase by 25%. That means the cost of living also increases by 25%, while wages did not increase by 25%. Therefore, it's going to be very hard to work and live at the same time. So, well, the workers will all go on strike and demand wage increases to match the increase in prices. And so, because of this, Truman's going to have to react to this. And when the railroad strike in the spring of 1946 threatened the U.S. economy, Truman will ask Congress for the power to draft strikers into the Army. However, Congress will ultimately refuse this idea just because it wasn't a very good idea and it would not make anybody very popular. However, you may want to pay attention to this because it may or may not be in your questions at the end. This railroad strike will be very detrimental to the country because, yes, we do have trucks to move goods, but railroads are still going to be able to move the most amount of goods quickly. So it's going to really hurt our country to do this. And so that's why Truman was willing to go so far as to draft the strikers into the army, basically to get them to quit striking. Truman also takes steps to prevent labor unrest from hurting our national economy. So all these strikes are actually hurting our economy a little bit. So Truman's going to have to do things to try and prevent that from happening. So John L. Lewis and the United Mine Workers, or the UMW, will be fired for contempt of court for ignoring an injunction. Basically, the coal production started getting so low that, that we weren't able to produce steel. As a result, we can't build anything, and also our main source of energy at this time is coal. And so that's very dangerous for the company. And so there's an injunction passed out by the court basically telling UMW you have to get back to work. But John L. Lewis and the United Mine Workers, they ignored that, resulting in them ultimately being fired. Congress will also pass the Taft-Hartley Act in 1947 over Truman's veto. So Truman did not like the Taft-Hartley Act, so he vetoed it, but Congress got a two-thirds majority to override that veto. And the Taft-Hartley Act allows the president to call an 80-day quote-unquote cooling off period during which workers would return to work while the government investigated the working conditions or the reason why people were striking. So if a strike breaks out, the president can call this 80-day cooling off period, so workers must go back to work, and the government then will promise to investigate the situation. And like many other acts of this era, union leaders were required to sign non-communist loyalty agreements and oaths. And this would also be a reason why Truman wasn't a big supporter of it. He felt that this was an unnecessary thing. So the second part of the Taft-Hartley Act, union leaders would be forced to require a sign, basically a loyalty oath, and that they weren't a member of the Communist Party. And as the 1946 election neared, Truman proposed his Fair Deal program in order to extend the New Deal goals of FDR. Now, the thing to note about the 1946 election, it is not a presidential election. It is a midterm election. So this is where we reelect an entire new House of Representatives as well as 1/3 of the Senate. So this fair deal that Truman comes up with will propose an extension of the government's active role in the economy and call for full employment. We want to raise the minimum wage, unemployment compensation, and control of atomic energy, housing assistance, and a national health insurance program. So all these things will be called for under the Fair Deal Act. Um, and for the most part, it's always a goal of every administration to have full employment as well as usually raise the minimum wage. Um, and so Truman also wants to add unemployment compensation, so basically unemployment payments, as well as control our atomic energy, which is definitely necessary. But he also wants to be able to provide housing assistance and national health insurance programs. Now, some of these things won't come about right away, but eventually we will have many of these things being enacted. And a coalition or group of conservative Democrats and Republicans in Congress will oppose most of Truman's Fair Deal. And when the Republicans win control of Congress in 1946, their goal would actually be to downsize the federal government's control, whereas the Fair Deal wanted to increase the federal government and its control. We're going to have two very differing opinions between the president and Congress. So really, Truman's not going to get a whole lot passed out of this Fair Deal. However, he did have numerous ideas in there that were actually pretty good ideas. And so now we're going to move forward to the presidential election in 1948, which is going to ultimately surprise the nation on how this whole thing breaks out. So just a little background information first. The Democratic Party will have their unity fall apart after the nomination of President Truman, who split his party by calling for Democratic support for civil rights for all Americans. So Truman's going to start listening to the civil rights movement, and he's going to say, yeah, African Americans do deserve equal rights, and not just African Americans, but all Americans deserve equal rights. Southern conservative Democrats will oppose this civil rights idea and break away to form the States' Rights Party. And the nickname for the States' Rights Party was the Dixiecrats. And they would be led by Governor Strom Thurmond of South Carolina. Democratic liberals will also break away and support the Progressive Party candidate, Henry Wallace. Now, Democrats were at the point of, well, you thought Truman was doing a good job. He's kind of a middle of the road Democrat, or, well, you hated the civil rights portion of it, so you're going to support Strom Thurmond and Dixiecrats. And, well, if you felt like Truman didn't do enough, well, then you're going to support Henry Wallace. So the Democratic Party will be split three ways. That means a united and confident Republican Party will nominate Thomas Dewey, who is the current governor of New York, to run for them. So if you pay attention to other elections that we've talked about where there's a split in one party, usually the party that's not split will win the election. However, months of attacking, and so just real quick recap, we have the Democrats with Truman, Dixiecrats with Strom Thurmond, Progressive has Henry Wallace, and the Republicans nominate Thomas Dewey. So these four men will be running for office. Now, after months of attacking the quote-unquote do-nothing Republican Congress, give them hell, Harry will score an upset victory over Dewey and the Republicans. So in that election in 1946, when Republicans win Congress, they essentially do absolutely nothing to help the American people. Because of this, Truman will point out that the Republicans really aren't doing anything with their policies that will help the American people. And because of this, he will end up winning the election of 1948 over a united Republican Party. And over the next 4 years, Truman achieves only occasional success and was hurt by the numerous instances of government corruption. And in 1952, Truman will actually decline to run and support the Democratic candidate instead. So it's important to note that at this point, in 1951, we do pass the 22nd Amendment. So you might want to add this in your notes that the 22nd Amendment was established in 1951. And what the 22nd Amendment did is it creates term limits for presidents. And it allows and it lays out how presidents are only allowed to serve 2 terms, and if you step in for as the vice president for the president, should something happen to the president, how that affects your term limits. So that is the 22nd Amendment, passed in 1951. Now, upper picture on the left, the Chicago Daily Tribune wanted to be the first paper to announce the election. However, well, as you can see, they got the headline wrong, and that's why this picture is so iconic, because it's Harry Truman holding up a newspaper saying that he actually lost the election that he really won. Now, you can see this political map over here on the right. It shows the 1948 actual election results. Red would be for Dewey, blue is for Truman, and yellow are all the states that voted for Strom Thurmond. Now, the Dixiecrats at this point are going to start to have kind of a push in the southern region of the United States. And when we talk about future elections here coming up, you're really going to want to pay attention to South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas, and kind of see how they vote going forward in these future elections. So the election of 1952 will pit Republican Dwight Eisenhower versus Democrat Adlai Stevenson. Sorry, Adlai Stevenson. Eisenhower's slogan was very simple. It's "I like Ike," where he focused on winning on a winning formula of K1C2, which means he wants to end the war in Korea, get tough on communism, and eliminate government corruption. And the weird thing is, during the election, Ike's vice president candidate, Richard Nixon, would be accused of receiving illegal money. However, Nixon was able to save his political career with the televised Checkers speech, where it basically says the only gift he's ever accepted while being in office was their family's dog named Checkers. And basically, he pleaded to the people to not make him give up their family dog, Checkers, and how it upset his children. Here's a link to that. I will post that in the comments or in the description for you guys. And the Republicans will easily win the election and control of Congress in 1952. So I'm going to stop this video here, and I will be uploading a second part. So please make sure you watch both parts today. So this is part 1. Please make sure you watch part 2, which will finish off the section 3 notes.